When Robert Mitchell, a homeless Afghanistan veteran, received a parking ticket outside the VA hospital, he never imagined that going to court to face Judge Frank Caprio would become one of the most life-changing moments of his life. What the judge said to him during those final weeks of his career would not only shock everyone in the courtroom, but would also demonstrate the incredible legacy of compassion that made Judge Caprio famous around the world. If this story moves you as much as it moved everyone who witnessed it, you'll understand why Judge Frank Caprio's final days on the bench were filled with moments that will be remembered forever. The morning of November 15th, 2025, started like any other in Judge Caprio's Providence Municipal Court. The courtroom was filled with its usual mix of traffic violators, each waiting their turn to face the judge who had become internationally known for his unique blend of justice and mercy. Among those seated in the back row was Robert Daniel Mitchell, a 34-year-old Army veteran whose weathered appearance told the story of struggles that went far beyond a simple parking violation. Robert had served 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan with the 82nd Airborne Division, experiences that had left invisible scars that proved harder to heal than any physical wound. Since returning home in 2018, he had battled PTSD, depression, and the overwhelming challenge of adjusting to civilian life. Despite his best efforts to rebuild his life, a series of setbacks had led to job loss, eviction, and ultimately homelessness. For the past 8 months, Robert had been living on the streets of Providence, sleeping in shelters when space was available or in his broken-down car when it wasn't. The parking ticket that brought Robert to Judge Caprio's courtroom had been issued 3 weeks earlier outside the Providence VA Medical Center. Robert had been experiencing a severe panic attack and had parked illegally in his desperate attempt to reach the mental health services he desperately needed. He knew he was breaking the law, but in that moment of crisis, getting help had been more important than finding a legal parking space. As Court Officer Michael Rodriguez called Robert's name, the veteran stood up slowly, straightening his worn Army jacket and walking to the defendant's table with the measured steps of someone trying to maintain dignity despite overwhelming circumstances. Judge Caprio, who had developed an almost supernatural ability to read people during his decades on the bench, immediately sensed that this case would be different from the routine traffic violations he typically handled. "Good morning, Mr. Mitchell," Judge Caprio said in the warm, grandfatherly tone that had made him beloved around the world. "I see you're here regarding a parking violation. Can you tell me what happened?" Robert cleared his throat and began to speak in a voice that carried the weight of experiences most people could never imagine. "Your Honor, I received this parking ticket 3 weeks ago outside the VA hospital. I was parked illegally, and I understand that I broke the law. I'm not here to make excuses or ask for special treatment. I'm here because I respect this court, and I wanted to appear as required, even though I know I can't pay the fine." The simple honesty in his words immediately captured Judge Caprio's full attention. Judge Caprio leaned forward slightly, recognizing something different in Robert's demeanor. This wasn't someone trying to avoid responsibility or looking for an easy way out. This was a man facing his problems head-on despite overwhelming circumstances. "Mr. Mitchell, can you tell me a little bit about your situation? I want to understand what you're dealing with." What Robert revealed next would create one of the most powerful moments in Judge Caprio's final weeks on the bench. "Your Honor, I served 2 tours in Afghanistan with the 82nd Airborne Division. When I came home in 2018, I struggled with PTSD and had difficulty adjusting to civilian life. I lost my job, then my apartment, and eventually ended up on the streets. For the past 8 months, I've been living in my car when I can afford gas, or in shelters when space is available." Robert paused, clearly fighting back emotion, before continuing. "The day I got this ticket, I had parked illegally because I was at the VA hospital trying to get help with my mental health treatment. I knew it was wrong to park there, but I was having a panic attack and just needed to get inside. I understand I broke the law, and I'm prepared to face the consequences, but I wanted you to know why it happened." The courtroom fell completely silent as Robert's words sank in. This was not just another traffic violation case. This was a window into the struggles faced by thousands of veterans who had served their country with honor, only to find themselves abandoned by the very society they had sworn to protect. Judge Caprio, who had always shown special consideration for veterans in his courtroom, felt the weight of this moment in ways that went far beyond a simple parking ticket. Judge Caprio sat quietly for several moments, processing what he had just heard. Those who knew him well recognized this pause as the moment when his legendary empathy and wisdom would combine to create something special. When he finally spoke, his words would not only address Robert's immediate situation, but would also serve as a powerful reminder of the values that had guided his entire career. Mr. Mitchell, first let me thank you for your service to our country. The fact that you served 2 tours in Afghanistan means you've sacrificed more for this nation than most people ever will. Second, I want you to know that seeking help at the VA hospital isn't something you should ever feel bad about. Taking care of your mental health is not only important, it's necessary, and anyone who would criticize you for that doesn't understand what real courage looks like. What Judge Caprio said next would create a moment so emotionally powerful that everyone in the courtroom would remember it for the rest of their lives. Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to dismiss this parking ticket completely. But more than that, I want you to know something important. You say you've been struggling since you came home, and I understand that. But the fact that you're here today, standing in my courtroom, taking responsibility for your actions, even when you're facing such difficult circumstances, that tells me everything I need to know about your character. The judge's voice grew stronger as he continued, his words carrying the weight of decades of experience and wisdom. You served our country with honor, and you're continuing to serve by being an example of integrity and responsibility. Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you that you're a failure or that your struggles define you. You're a hero, Mr. Mitchell, and heroes sometimes need help. There's no shame in that. But Judge Caprio wasn't finished. What he did next would demonstrate why his approach to justice had touched millions of people around the world. Officer Rodriguez, please get Mr. Mitchell the contact information for veteran services here in Providence. And Mr. Mitchell, I want you to tell them that Judge Caprio sent you personally. They'll make sure you get the help you need. The judge then did something that shocked everyone in the courtroom. He stood up from his bench, walked around to where Robert was standing, and extended his hand. Mr. Mitchell, it has been an honor to meet you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for seeking help when you needed it. And thank you for showing everyone in this courtroom what real courage looks like. As Judge Caprio shook Robert's hand, the veteran's composure finally broke. Tears began streaming down his face as he struggled to find words. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for seeing me as a person and not just another case. This means more to me than you'll ever know. The courtroom erupted in spontaneous applause as spectators, court staff, and even other defendants stood to honor both Robert's service and Judge Caprio's compassion. What made this moment even more powerful was the knowledge that this was happening during Judge Caprio's final weeks on the bench, making it a perfect example of the legacy he was leaving behind. But the story doesn't end there. What happened in the days following this courtroom encounter would prove that Judge Caprio's impact extended far beyond the walls of his courthouse. Within 24 hours of the hearing, word had spread throughout the Providence community about what had happened. Local businesses, veterans organizations, and private citizens began reaching out to offer Robert assistance. A local auto repair shop offered to fix Robert's car free of charge. A restaurant owner provided him with a part-time job that came with meal benefits. Most importantly, a veterans housing organization was able to secure Robert temporary housing while he worked with VA counselors to address his mental health needs. The ripple effects of Judge Caprio's compassion continued to spread. The video of the hearing, which had been recorded as part of the court's standard procedure, was shared on social media and quickly went viral. Millions of people around the world watched as Judge Caprio demonstrated that true justice isn't just about following the law. It's about understanding the human story behind every case. Mental health advocates used the video to highlight the struggles faced by veterans with PTSD. Legal experts pointed to it as an example of how judges can make a real difference in people's lives while still upholding the law. Most importantly, other veterans who were struggling with similar issues saw Robert's story and were inspired to seek the help they needed. The impact on Robert himself was transformative. Within 6 months of his appearance in Judge Caprio's courtroom, he had secured stable housing, was working full-time, and had become an advocate for homeless veterans in the Providence area. He frequently spoke about how Judge Caprio's words and actions had given him the strength to believe in himself again. Judge Caprio didn't just dismiss my parking ticket, Robert would later say. He gave me back my dignity. He saw me as a person worth helping, and that changed everything for me. When someone believes in you like that, especially someone as respected as Judge Caprio, it gives you the strength to keep fighting. The legal community also took notice of Judge Caprio's handling of Robert's case. Law schools began using the video as a teaching tool, showing future lawyers and judges how compassion and justice can work together. The case became a standard example of how the legal system can be both fair and humane. What made Judge Caprio's response even more remarkable was the timing. This interaction took place during his final weeks on the bench, as he was preparing to end a career that had spanned decades and touched countless lives. For many observers, Robert's case perfectly encapsulated everything that had made Judge Caprio special throughout his career. The Providence Municipal Court, where Judge Caprio had served for so many years, has since created the Judge Frank Caprio Compassion Award, given annually to legal professionals who demonstrate exceptional empathy and humanity in their work. The first recipient was the court officer who had helped connect Robert with veteran services after the hearing. Religious leaders throughout Providence also took notice of what had happened in Judge Caprio's courtroom. Many used the story in their sermons as an example of how to treat those who are struggling with dignity and respect. The Archbishop of Providence issued a statement calling Judge Caprio's actions a perfect example of how we should treat our neighbors, especially those who have served our country. The psychological impact of Judge Caprio's words extended far beyond Robert himself. Mental health professionals noted that the judge's public validation of Robert's worth and his emphasis on the courage required to seek help had sent a powerful message to anyone struggling with similar issues. Veterans crisis hotlines reported an increase in calls from people seeking help in the weeks following the video's release. The economic impact was also significant. Local businesses reported increased interest in hiring veterans, partly inspired by the attention Robert's story had brought to the challenges faced by those returning from military service. The Providence Chamber of Commerce launched a Hire a Veteran campaign that resulted in over 200 job placements in its first year. Educational institutions took notice as well. Brown University, located in Providence, invited Robert to speak to their students about his experiences. His presentation, titled From Homelessness to Hope, The Power of Human Dignity, became one of the most attended events in the university's history. The story also had a profound impact on Judge Caprio himself. In interviews during his final weeks on the bench, he often mentioned Robert's case as one of the most meaningful moments of his career. Mr. Mitchell reminded me why I became a judge in the first place, he said. It's not about the law books or the procedures. It's about the people who come before you seeking justice and understanding. The timing of this encounter, coming so close to the end of Judge Caprio's career, gave it additional poignancy. Court staff who had worked with him for years noted that he seemed particularly moved by Robert's case, perhaps because it represented everything he had tried to accomplish during his time on the bench. The international response to the story was overwhelming. News outlets from around the world covered Robert's case and Judge Caprio's response. Legal systems in other countries began examining how they could incorporate more compassion into their proceedings. The story was translated into dozens of languages and shared across social media platforms, reaching millions of people who had never heard of Judge Frank Caprio before. What made the story even more powerful was its authenticity. This wasn't a publicity stunt or a carefully orchestrated event. It was simply Judge Caprio being himself, demonstrating the same compassion and wisdom that had characterized his entire career. The spontaneous nature of his response, combined with the genuine emotion displayed by both men, created a moment of pure human connection that resonated with people around the world. The legacy of this single courtroom encounter continues to this day. Robert Mitchell has become a respected advocate for veterans' rights and homelessness prevention. He frequently speaks about how one moment of human kindness changed the trajectory of his entire life. His story serves as a powerful reminder that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of their circumstances. Judge Frank Caprio's final weeks on the bench were filled with many memorable moments, but his encounter with Robert Mitchell stands out as perhaps the most perfect example of what made him special. In a world that often seems divided and harsh, Judge Caprio's approach to Robert's case demonstrated that compassion, understanding, and human dignity should always be at the heart of justice. If this incredible story of courage, compassion, and the transformative power of human kindness has moved you as much as it moved everyone who witnessed it, please show your support by hitting that like button. Judge Frank Caprio's encounter with Robert Mitchell proves that when we choose to see the humanity in each other, especially in those who are struggling, we have the power to change lives in ways we never imagined. The judge may have left his bench, but the lessons he taught us about justice, mercy, and human dignity will continue to inspire people for generations to come.